Almighty God, we pray for your blessing upon this council. Help and prosper its work for the advancement and benefit of its people, so that peace and happiness, unity and justice may be established amongst us all. Amen. Amen. Please be seated. Manningham City Council acknowledges the Wurundjeri people as the traditional custodians of the land we now know as Manningham. We pay our respects to Wurundjeri elders past and present and value their ongoing contribution to the cultural heritage of Manningham. I'd like to welcome all the members of the public here tonight to this council meeting who have come to observe our proceedings. I'd also like to advise you that tonight's meeting is being audio and video recorded. All care will be taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. By remaining in the gallery, it is assumed your consent is given in the event that your voice and/or image is broadcast. Manningham Council would also like to acknowledge the contribution made to Manningham over the years by people of diverse backgrounds and cultures. For the gallery's information, all council meetings are controlled by a meeting procedure local law. I'll introduce each item of business as listed on the agenda by calling it by number and by reading the title. I'll then call for a mover and a seconder of a motion on the item before opening any debate. Only councillors are able to join the debate on any item. Councillors may adopt the officer's recommendation in the report or propose amendments and supplementary motions. I'd like to draw your attention to item 7 on tonight's agenda, which is a public question time. This provides people with an opportunity to ask questions of the council. Questions must be registered prior to the commencement of the meeting to be asked and may be taken on notice if we do not have the information at hand to provide a meaningful response. I also stress that I will deal with a maximum of 2 questions per person and 2 questions on any issue. If you have more than 2 questions, please submit these additional questions in writing to council through the normal channels. Item 2, apologies and requests for leave of absence. There are no apologies. Item 3, prior notification of conflict of interest. There are no conflicts of interest. Item 4, confirmation of minutes. Can I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor McLeish.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the Council held on 30th of January 2018 be confirmed.
Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Goff. Would the mover like to speak?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Would the seconder like to speak? Are there any speakers against the motion? Are there any further speakers to the motion? Then I will put that motion. Those in favour? That is carried. Item 6. Sorry, did I miss one? Item 5, presentations. It's my great pleasure to take this opportunity to acknowledge the achievements of 2 of Australia's Winter Olympians who hail from the city of Manningham. The 2 Olympians are Scotty James. So to Scotty, congratulations on your fantastic performance. Scotty is the was a bronze medal winner at the Pyeongchang 2018 Olympic Winter Games. Scotty travels the world to train and compete, but still calls Warrandyte home. As a fellow Warrandytean, it was great to see him shouting out, giving a shout out every time he could to Warrandyte and therefore Manningham during the Games. The slopes of Pyeongchang are certainly a long way from the idyllic banks of the Yarra River. Over the course of the Games, he has been a fantastic ambassador for our area, as well as Australia, as flag bearer at the opening ceremony and throughout the competition. It has been great to see Scotty excel in the halfpipe. He has done his country and our community proud. Scotty and his bronze medal return home to Manningham this week. Our second Olympian is David Morris. Sochi 24 silver medalist David Morris became a three-time Olympian at Pyeongchang 2018. David finished in 10th place, just one spot outside of the penultimate round of the men's aerials. David is the first Australian male aerial skier to compete at 2 consecutive Olympic Games and the first Australian medalist in the Olympic men's aerials. Locally born and raised in Donvale, I believe David, who is a qualified mathematics and PE teacher, continues to be involved with our local community as an emergency relief teacher, gymnastics, cheerleading and trampolining coach when he is at home between training camps and competitions. Congratulations to both Scotty and David on your respective achievements. Thank you. Item 6, petitions. There are no petitions. Item 7, public question time. Are there any questions?
No, there are no questions.
Item 8, admission of urgent business. There are no items of urgent business. Item 9, planning permit applications. Item 9.1, planning application PL 17/027627, 29 and 31 Manningham Road, Bulleen, for construction of 8 three-storey dwellings over a basement car park and alteration of access to a road in a road zone category 1.
So moved as on the paper, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Can I have a seconder?
I second that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Piccinini. Councillor Goff, would you like to speak to
Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors. This is an application, as you can see here, for 8 three-storey apartments over a underground basement car park, which is in an area that we have said in Manningham that we actually want to see this sort of development. Now, if you look through both lots of the lists of the compliances through the report, you will see that if there's an area that's not applicable, it says not applicable, or it's met and it's down the line. Many years ago, we actually made decisions at council as to where this denser population would come, and we said along main roads and around shopping centres. And this indeed, construction is a large site. It's 2 blocks of land, and it is on Manningham Road in Bulleen. It is, it's got the DD08 clarification, and it's also in, I suppose, a growth zone as far as we're concerned. It's a residential growth zone. So that little tag on that property says to anyone that owns that property with that on their title, actually says, this is where we want you to come and build higher density living. And indeed, I know that this particular application has been to council, to the Sustainable Design Task Force, and I hope they had a lot of input into this particular design, because councillors, if you do look at it, it's a very, very nice design for a corner site, and it actually takes advantage of Manningham Road. It actually takes advantage of the corner, and it takes advantage of the other street there as you're going down. And indeed, if you look at the actual design, it is great. Interesting to see that the I think it was 33% site coverage above ground, and I think it was 51 or 2% site coverage underground. So as you drive down, and the one thing that I am impressed with is that the going in and leaving that site is from Manningham Road, so it's not going to actually put the traffic onto the side street. It is off Manningham Road itself, and of course Vic Roads must have given them great permission to be able to do that. And it is a very wide driveway, so it's going to be easy to access in and out of that particular part of Manningham Road because of the width of that driveway. I think the officers have done a great job on this in getting all the conditions and everything down to alleviate the fears. There was an objection, and the objection came from a nearby house, and basically the objections were on overdevelopment and overpopulation and overlooking and also overshadowing, which were a number of them. But indeed, I think if we look at the overshadowing diagrams, we can actually see that but it falls within the acceptable levels of that, and the overlooking, I think, has been addressed in a number of the terms within the conditions of the permit, as far as that's concerned. So, councillors, I believe that this particular site should get our seal of approval, and I hope you all vote in favour of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Councillor Piccini, anything further?
Mr Mayor.
Are there any speakers against the motion? Councillor
I'm not
Zafiropoulos.
speaking against it. However, I would like to observe that whilst most of the conditions have been met, several, 3 or 4, have met with conditions, and there are a couple of things that haven't been met. However, we have made an exemption. One has to do with the setback, which is not the 6 metres required. And the other comment that I'd like to make is that whilst this particular development requires 1,800 square metres, it doesn't have 1,800, but nevertheless we accepted it for all the other reasons that Councillor Goff has mentioned.
Are there any further speakers for or against? Councillor Goff, would you like to respond, or it's? I'll take it as a sort of an against. Actually, no, it's okay. Don't.
Well,
Yeah. Okay.
is it or not?
I'll take it as against. I'll take it as against.
Well, Mr Mayor, first of all, I'd like to have a clarification then of the street. Is it the street? What was the street setback? Yeah. Can I have a clarification of that? Because as I read it, we've got a preferred one of 6 metres. It's working within here, and it says the objective has been met. So I'll just have a clarification of that.
Through.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the report outlines on page 32 that the minimum street setback's actually, that's proposed is 5.69. So it's below the 6 metres, but it's viewed on balance that it meets the objectives of a consistent setback across that part of the road.
Thank you. Councillor Goff.
Yeah, I was looking at page 34. Probably of the council paper.
Is that, sorry, can you give the specific?
Page 24 is...
Page 34, 55.03.1, street setback.
Okay, that was asked and answered.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's what you're referring to there, yeah. Yeah. Okay. And in many ways, we've got a corner block here too. So one of the setbacks can be closer on the other side, and that's something that happens in corners, is people can choose which way in which their properties are going to front. But again, the setback from Manningham Road is fairly consistent with the rest of the stuff along Manningham Road, and indeed that setback, if you look further through there, is giving a very nice appeal to Manningham Road and that corner. So councillors, I do hope you support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. I'll now put that motion to the vote. Those for? Any against? That's carried. Item 10, City Planning. 10.1, Amendment C 104 and Westfield Doncaster Draft Development Plan consideration of submissions. Do I have a mover? Councillor McLeish.
Mr Mayor, I move that the alternate motion be adopted.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Kleinert. Councillor McLeish.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I'm pleased to rise to speak to this particular matter because I think it's quite important for our city that this particular upgrade to the Westfield Shopping Centre proceed to the next phase of consideration. It's a substantial change, no doubt about that. When you're talking about adding 43,000 square metres to the shop floor of Westfield, the overall site's currently 120,000, you are talking about a very substantial upgrade. But on top of that, we're going to see another 18,000 of office and commercial space added to the centre. This is a very substantial upgrade to the Westfield Shopping Centre, and the site is ready for this upgrade. There is no doubt about it. The community votes with its feet on these issues, and the community most certainly seeks to go to these large shopping centre precincts for an experience. It isn't just a shop. It's the experience of attending this centre and using all of the facilities that are included within the centre. And this particular expansion of the centre has been working its way through a process for many, many months. It came before us back in 2016 initially. There's been quite a few changes since then. They managed to acquire an additional property in Westfield Drive, and that, of course, has slowed down the progress of this particular planning scheme proposal because they revisited their plans and they included that extra property in the site, and because of that, we took the change was of such significance that it was necessary to go back out to our community to re-advertise the plans and to reopen the consultation process with the community. As a result, this particular amendment has seen around 2 months worth of public exhibition and comment from the community. There have been many submissions made by our community. We've had 85 submissions made of various sorts about the proposal. And if you think about the scale of what's being done here, that actually isn't a significant number of submissions on a proposal of this scale. I've seen more sort of objections than that to an apartment building than I have to something as substantial as this particular proposal. It is substantial, ladies and gentlemen. There are 2,900 full and part-time jobs, permanent jobs being created in the centre when the expansion is complete. There are another 2,000 that are occurring during construction. So you can be certain, ladies and gentlemen, there is going to be a substantial increase in employment in our city through this expansion. That's not necessarily a reason to pass this particular proposition, but it is something of great benefit for our community to see this sort of employment growth coming to our city. There have been a number of concerns raised about the proposal. Westfield Drive has certainly been the focus of some of that. And the concerns raised about the Westfield Drive element of the proposal are addressed in the report, and I'm confident that the issues that have been raised are addressed. The report recommends some changes to allow Westfield Drive to be closed at the intersection with Manningham Road. And personally, I think that's a great step forward. If you've ever tried to turn right out of Westfield Drive into Manningham Road, you will know how dangerous that particular turn is. Even turning left can be quite a chancy operation with all of the traffic that's trying to get into the left lane and get into this centre. So reconstructing Westfield Drive so the exit is through the shopping precinct with a dedicated access, and the residents will be able to access the road network through a set of traffic lights is, in my view, a substantial improvement for the users of Westfield Drive. They have raised some concerns about whether that access will be permanent, but if you look through a report, you'll see there's a recommendation that a 173 agreement is put in place which guarantees that that access will remain there for the life of the centre and that the access will be free for those residents. So those concerns are addressed in the report. Public transport is addressed in the proposal. There'll be a dedicated bus intersection, substantial improvement to the bus integration with the centre because only buses will use that set of lights. That'll get the buses in and out of the centre faster. Much better for the commuters using the public transport. The bus bays are going to be substantially undercover with much improved access to the centre. That's going to improve public transport accessibility into the centre for everyone who uses that form of access to the centre. We're going to see substantial changes to parking. When I first saw this proposal, the parking elements of it, in my view, were poor. They simply weren't delivering what the community wanted. And they were poor for one very simple reason. Not enough parking was being provided in the proposed plans. But ladies and gentlemen, that's when the councillors got involved. And the councillors had some very determined meetings with the council staff and with the developer, and the parking rates were revisited. A substantial increase in parking rate was then negotiated. When this centre is finished, we are going to see 7,575 parking spaces. That's an increase from today where it's 4,650. We got an 8% increase in the overall parking rate for the centre. That is a substantial improvement. And it will actually bring it to the same level as the Eastland Shopping Centre. And that only occurred because the councillors involved at the time said, no, this is not acceptable. It's an overall improvement to the parking for the centre overall and a far greater improvement.
Councillor McLeish, time's up.
Would have been otherwise. If I could, I'm nearly done.
Okay. Thank you. I've got a motion to extend the speaker's time. Those for? Thank you. Carried.
Thank you. And this is an example, ladies and gentlemen, of the councillors working for the benefit of the community and addressing the significant concerns that the community have about the future development of this site and of this centre. And I'm pleased to say that Westfield were quite prepared to actually listen to what they were asked to deliver and have included it within this revised plans that we see before us here tonight. And I welcome that adjustment. I think it's going to substantially improve the centre. There are many changes to the road network within the centre that are going to address one of the other problems, which is the circulation within the car parks. The car parks are going to be much more effectively linked, and that is going to work for the benefit of everyone. Anyone who's driven through there on a busy weekend knows quite how challenging that road network in there can be to navigate. And there will be improvements. It won't be perfect, no shopping centre is, but there will be substantial improvements with the designs that we see included in this proposal. So, ladies and gentlemen, I guess you're wondering what happens next. Well, this particular proposal now goes out, if we make the decision before us, will go out for an independent review by a panel and advisory committee if we support this motion. So there'll be further review, further independent assessment of the viability and sensibility of the proposal that we see before us. If that committee, once that committee reports, it will come back to the council for further consideration. So what we're making a decision to do tonight, councillors, is to send this to the next stage, to send it on to the independent panel and advisory committee, or we're rejecting the whole thing. It's free, it's up to us to do that if we choose. I'm suggesting, councillors, that we should put this proposal to bed, we should send it on to the next phase and get some independent advice about the merits or otherwise of the proposal. So I ask you to support what's before you, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor McLeish. Councillor Kleinert?
I don't know that there's much more to add, but just reminding councillors, in September 2017, we resolved for a further period of public consultation. As the councillor has said, this is part of the process. So this is that we're allowing all the submissions that have come in that period to go to the independent board and advisory committee for consideration. So it's part of a process. Ignoring that would mean that those submissions that have been received, we're saying, no, we don't want them to go to the panel. Keeping it really simple in a process, that means that after that, it still comes to council again before it gets, well, then that's up for us to make that next decision. So I think as part of the process, we need to endorse it and allow the process to take where it's going. So ask that, as Councillor McLeish has clearly stated, that we vote for it.
Thank you, Councillor Kleinert. Are there any speakers against the motion?
I have a question.
Thank you, Councillor
Mr Mayor, the properties that are abutting this on that corner, I've looked through the draft plan that we're looking at sending to the panel, the rezoning of those corner units and the neighbouring ones abutting that specific property that's being developed at Westfield, are we looking at rezoning those as well within this planning application?
I'll ask the CEO to respond.
No, that would be a matter that would have to be dealt with consequentially.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? I'll put that motion. Those for? That's carried. Item 10.2, Westerfolds Paddle Sports Plan, first stage of community consultation. Do I have a mover? Thank you, councillor Piccinini.
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second that.
Thank you, councillor Gobley. Councillor Piccinini, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. At Westerfolds Park, near Fitzsimons Lane Bridge, we have the only stretch of the Yarra River that has flat water next to moving or white water with good paddler access for the whole of the Melbourne metropolitan region. And so it's not surprising that this site is heavily utilised by Canoeing Victoria and various canoeing and kayaking clubs and our community. There is currently limited club storage, or there's limited storage space at that site. There's also no change room facilities, so we have children changing in the car park. We have issues with clear pathways for the paddlers to the river, their interference with other users of the main Yarra Trail, and also there's an issue with accessibility to the river by spectators, persons with disabilities or mobility impairment or beginner paddlers. So a feasibility study that has been fully funded by the state government is now presented to council in its concept form, and the motion seeks that we support this concept and that it also seeks that it goes to the first stage of community consultation, and that will take place in March. There are three stakeholders to the plan: Parks Victoria, Melbourne Water and Manningham Council. The other two stakeholders will also conduct community consultations. Broadly speaking, the concept plan provides for the construction of a building on the Parks Victoria land at Westerfold. The building will be for community rooms with various clubs, storage for their canoes and kayaks, and change rooms. The concept plan also has boardwalks, so there and spectator viewing areas and improved ramps. Melbourne Water has committed $300,000 to their share of the project. Parks Victoria don't yet have committed funding, and it's noted that in the report that council's contribution would be estimated to be approximately $535,000, although that's not yet committed or in our budget. Council contribution would involve improving Fitzsimons Reserve by way of landscaping, a new river entrance and sealed path, and improved car parking space. So, Mr Mayor, I move that we as a council support the concept and that we agree for it to go out to community consultation for 4 weeks in March.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Galway?
Nothing to add, thanks.
Are there any speakers against the motion? Any other comments? I'll put that motion. Those for? Thank you. That's carried. Item 11, Assets and Engineering. 11.1, Obsolete Infrastructure following NBN rollout. Do I have a mover?
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move with a couple of small amendments.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
I'd like to make some amendments in Part A, B and C. In Part A, I'd like to, where it says action to write to Optus, we write to Optus and Telstra. And then where it says redundant infrastructure in Part A, it says Optus infrastructure, I want Optus and Telstra infrastructure written there. Part B, if we can, copies of the letter forward to the local federal member of parliament, our local member of federal parliament, then comma, the MAV and the Federal Minister for Communications and Information. Sorry, Federal Member for Communications for Information. And in Part C, where it says Optus, say Optus and Telstra. I think that's fairly clear. Is that clear?
Yeah, I'll just ask, we've recorded all that, thank you.
B is the local federal member of parliament. So we're writing, here it says to write to the MAV and the Federal Minister for Communication, but we do have a federal parliamentarian that represents our area, so we write to him as well. So it's a letter for information, okay?
Thank
That's
you.
what I
Do
wanted to know.
I have a seconder for the motion as Councillor Goff has put it?
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Zavropoulos.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I'm glad that we're going to be able to take a little bit of action here. Whether we get much action out of this, I don't know. But it seems to me that other levels of government have jurisdiction over local government. That is true. And public authorities put infrastructure in public land in authorities' areas. But then there's no process when that infrastructure becomes redundant for that infrastructure to be taken out of a public area, and I suppose it's left up to everyone to watch it decay, fall apart, and we clean up the mess. And indeed, I think if the infrastructure does go into the public realm, then it's duty-bound for the people that actually put that infrastructure in there to clean it up and take it out when it's no longer of working order. Now, as we've got the situation, as I mentioned last council, got a situation of NBN coming through Manningham, we have quite a bit of superfluous infrastructure. One, in a lot of the areas, and I've been told that it's not every area, but a lot of the areas, the Optus cable has become redundant because in the main NBN is using, if they're going to use cable, they are using the Telstra cable or the Foxtel cable, So now, but when the NBN goes in, those old copper wires that did the phone numbers become redundant. So as you see, the telephone, our light poles and that with the wires, have telephone wires running across over the road, all through houses, into houses for the copper line. That, when the NBN is in, is totally redundant. And again, that needs to be removed. So I'm just hoping that we can get a situation where those areas are cleaned up, especially the low-lying cables, which were really contentious in the 90s. In the mid-90s, when Optus came through and strung cables very low to the street, lower than anywhere else you would find any other cable being strung, it reminded me very much of a third world country, and that was what was being said when these cables were being laid at that particular height throughout our area. It has a great deal of damage on, I suppose, the beauty of an area and the visual nature, but also on the sorts of trees that we can plant. If you have planting a tree and you have to cut it out 2 metres lower than the power lines, you're starting to really wreck the visual environment that we have in our streetscapes. And indeed, if that infrastructure isn't worthwhile and is not being used anymore, it really needs to be taken out by the owner. It's sort of like we charge people if they just dump rubbish in our area, and this rubbish is being left here. It's no longer of any use and it needs to be removed. So, councillors, I hope we support this and get some action.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Councillor Zafiropoulos, do you have anything further?
I think Councillor Goff outlined all the reasons why we should take this particular action. I support it also because I'm a little bit upset, and I'm sure my colleagues are too. Repeated attempts to contact Optus were unsuccessful, and this is unacceptable for an organisation such as Optus to ignore attempts to communicate with them by a council. And this is again an example of responsible councillors observing the amenity of our municipality and coming up with things that ought to be fixed. So I'd like to congratulate Councillor Goff for bringing that to the attention of the council.
Thank you, Councillor Zafiropoulos. Is there any speakers against the motion? I'll put that motion. Those for? That is carried. Item 11.2, 2017-2018 Capital Works Program end of December status report. Do I have a mover?
Yeah, I'd like,
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, got Councillor Zafiropoulos. I'll take you as the mover. Do I have a seconder? I'll take Councillor McLeish. Councillor Zafiropoulos.
Mr Mayor, capital expenditure is probably one of the most important activities that our council undertakes. After all, we spend 1/3 of our expenditure into this area. I'm very pleased to receive this report, this mid-year review, which outlines that we've been quite successful. We had 82 projects. We completed, if I remember correctly, 12, and 57 are in progress, and it is anticipated that they will be completed. 9 have not started yet, but the expectations are that they will also be completed in time. There's only 4 projects that we will not be able to complete, and for all sorts of reasons, including the scoping and the approval delays, make it impossible for us to complete them in this financial year. So usually what happens, unspent projects and funds are transferred to the next financial year. On this occasion, it has been suggested or proposed that we spend the additional, the money from those 4 projects in this financial year to boost existing projects or additional projects. So this is a good strategy. I should point out that the amount of money, the projected new annual budget will be more than $45 million, so it's quite a lot of money. I urge the council to support and receive that report and congratulate all those involved in ensuring the success of all those projects.
Thank you, Zafiropoulos. Thank you, Councillor Zafiropoulos. Councillor McLeish, anything further to add?
Nothing to add, Mr Mayor.
Any speakers against? I'll put that motion. Those for? That's carried. Item 12, community programs. There are no community programs reports. Item 13, shared services. Item 14, Chief Executive Officer. 14.1, cold review. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Chen.
Mr Mayor, I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Zafiropoulos. Thank you. Councillor Chen, would you like to speak to it?
Mr Mayor, the review touches my heart deeply. Manningham is culturally diverse. 42% residents speak a language other than English at home, and 40% born overseas. As a first-generation migrant, born overseas, and speak a language, second language at home, I understand the difficulty of receiving information and connecting with the mainstream society. Study also shows that in a multicultural society with an aging population, the language loss in elderly has become a concern. Therefore, frequent review of our communication policy is more important than ever. The review is to ensure Council's communication channels caters for the diverse core community. CORE stands for culturally, linguistically diverse. And some improvements have been made, such as Manningham Matters now have almost one-page translated materials in top 6 community languages. Our residents might have already noticed that the key messages of our council's letters was translated if a project directly affects our residents. Code communications and publications and information fact sheets will be available around the end of February. Opportunity to use local community radio, digital improvements are being investigated. Of course, improvements are a continuing process, and Council should never content with the current achievement. I congratulate our officers for preparing and implementing the review, and I ask my fellow councillors to support the improvements, opportunities identified and being implemented through the CARD review. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Would the seconder like to speak to it?
I think Councillor Chen has already mentioned these important statistics, which are amazing. 42% of our community speaks a language other than English at home, and almost a similar percentage was born overseas. Now, this creates a lot of challenges for our municipality and for this council. And these challenges have to do with our ability to ensure that every single resident in competence are able to understand both their rights but also their responsibilities. And you cannot do this unless you develop innovative ways of engaging with that sector of the community. The review goes a long way to addressing that issue. I would suggest that we've got a long way to go. There are other improvements that we could make. We can learn from best practice organisations. Local government has entered this area a bit late. The federal government and the state government have done a lot of work, both in terms of policy and programs in this area. And I'm glad that the review took into account the Victoria Multicultural Commission's guidelines in relation to interpreting and translations. We have made it a goal of this council that we will become the most successful council in Victoria, and with the demographics in relation to our cultural diversity, let us also incorporate making this council the model council that serves its community with all its diversity, not leaving out anyone, including everyone. And I'm very proud that I'm chairing the Access and Equity Committee, which has got that as its main role. So I strongly support the improvements suggested, but I would encourage that we go further.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speakers against? I'll put that motion on the floor. That is carried. Item 14.2, draft submission of a local government bill exposure draft. Do I have a mover? Councillor McLeish.
Mr Mayor, I move that the alternate motion be adopted.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kleinert. Councillor McLeish.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm pleased to rise to speak to this particular item, Mr Mayor. The government has been implementing a review of the Local Government Act, and what we have been doing is looking at some of the proposed amendments that they've put forward. They've been seeking consultation from around Victoria, from local government, on the changes that they're proposing, and there's no doubt that there are some improvements proposed in the review of the Act, and it's not before time. The Local Government Act has needed this review for many years, and it's a great way of refreshing the controls that exist around local to guide the operation of local government. That being said, I don't think we should necessarily accept all of the proposals which the government is putting forward, because I think some of them are quite realistic, are really unnecessary, and have some unnecessary side effects on local government. A classic one here is that there's a proposal here that the Mayor will have a significant role in determining the agenda of council meetings. And the Mayor will have the power to make appointments for committees. And of course, as a council, that's not been the approach that we've had. We consider the Mayor and our council to be the first among equals. The Mayor speaks for the council, he doesn't lead the council. And there's a very significant difference. We are 9 councillors representing our wards, representing our community. We are equal, and the Mayor is our spokesperson. To have a change to the Act where the Mayor has an opportunity to make appointments unnecessarily politicises the role of the Mayor, in my view. And that's why we as a council have, within this report, disagreed with this proposition. It's important that the Mayor's role, in my view, remains one of an equal amongst the councillors. To have a council politicised by, potentially politicised by the awarding of positions on committees, and we've all seen these sorts of things happen in political arenas, is, in my view, an unnecessary politicisation of local government. There is a good clause being introduced, suggested within this proposal, and that is one whereby a council has the opportunity to dismiss a Mayor. Now, I've never really been in a position where I felt in any way necessary to dismiss a Mayor, but I can see a circumstance where such a thing could occur. It can be that you can end up in a situation where a Mayor is no longer a person performing in a way that the council, that has the trust of the council. And the way the draft Act is framed, it would take a vote of 3/4 of the councillors to remove a Mayor from office. And it's a very drastic step. I can't imagine such a thing happening in my time on council. But it is a credible thing to do, to provide a mechanism for a council to decide for itself to remove a sitting Mayor if they no longer had confidence in the Mayor's ability to perform the role. So I'm quite interested to see that proposal being introduced. Another proposal here that we are opposing is, of course, the introduction of a universal voting system. And this would provide an opportunity for the Minister to decide that local government will all use one form of voting. At the moment, most councils have postal, a few councils have attendance voting, but in the end, it's within the remit of each council to decide which of the particular voting mechanisms they will opt to use. And I think that's credible. Why can't we leave it to councils? What's wrong with this? We don't seek to tell the state government how their voting system should work. Why are they seeking to tell us how ours should work? But most importantly, how are we going to implement new technology? What happens if someone comes along and says, oh, we want to trial electronic voting? The way you would do that, quite sensibly, is do it within a small number of councils. But the Act would prevent this. You would never be able to introduce electronic voting in local government if this proposition, without amending the Act of Parliament that controls it, which is particularly pointless, I think. I think the provision where councils get to decide the voting system they'll use for their election is perfectly reasonable, and that's the way it should proceed. There's a bunch of other things in here, councillors. I won't go on because I know I'm probably boring you. We've all been through it. We've read the draft submissions. We've all offered our opinion. And what we have here is before us is an accumulation of those views, which we are now deciding to send to the government as the views of Manningham Council. And I would ask you to support the motion before you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kleinert, anything? Any speakers against? I'll put that motion. Those for? That's carried. Thank you. Item 14.3, road naming change proposal. Police Street to Jones Way, Warrandyte. Do I have a mover for that motion?
I'd like to move that.
Thank you, Councillor Galbally.
I'd like to move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Thank you, Councillor McLeish. Councillor Galbally.
Yes, Mr Mayor. As a council, I'd like your support for this proposal to rename Police Street, Warrandyte, to Jones Way, Warrandyte. Police Street at the moment houses basically one building, and that's the police station, oddly enough, and pretty much not much else. And the Victorian Police actually have written a letter of support for this name change as well, so they don't mind losing the name. And everyone seems to know where the police station is anyway. And no, don't be facetious. But going back, I'd like to say something about Ben Jones, who is an icon, or was an icon, in Warrandyte. He has spent over 60 years living in Warrandyte. As a fresh 19-year-old, he enlisted in the army for World War II, and he served for 6 years, and soon later he ended up in Warrandyte, where he met and married his wife and where they raised their children. So you might think, well, you know, nothing's outstanding there, but the outstanding thing here is how real this person was and what a community person he was. He spent 59 years just being an active member of the Warrandyte Football Club. Every year he would set himself up and sell poppies and badges for Anzac Day. He did this all on his own back, and he was loved by everyone. He was warm, and he was basically showing exactly what a good person is and the sort of person we want in our vicinity. Everyone loved him, so much so that the same month that he passed away, in May 2016, Keith Walker, who, well, all of us knew him as Sergeant Keith Walker, and I still refer to him as Sergeant, even though he's retired, God bless him. And he led this, in the same month that Ben passed away, he led this proposal, and the community just jumped up behind him. And I think it's a rather nice touch where the family sort of recount the fact that they live just across the road from where the police station is at Warrandyte, on Yarra Street, and Police Road would actually be the way that Ben would walk towards Yarra Street. And by calling it Jones Way is just that extra bit of magic touch for the community. So I ask for your support in this endeavour. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McLeish, anything further to add?
No, Mr Mayor.
Any speakers against? I'll put that motion. Those for. That is carried. Thank you. Item 14.4, appointment of authorised officers, Planning and Environment Act 1987. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Haynes.
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Chen. Councillor Haynes, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I've said enough.
Councillor Chen.
So, just say a few words.
Thank you.
Firstly, I just believe that the three appointees are the best of the best in the industry. And Manningham has experienced change and is anticipating substantial change. So welcome. Hopefully together, let's contribute to and ensure the sustainable development of Manningham.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Any speakers against? I'll put that motion. Those for. And carried. Item 14.5, record of Assembly of Councillors. Do I have a mover for that motion? Thank you. Councillor Kleinert.
That the recommendation be adopted.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Councillor Kleinert. Councillor Haynes. Any speakers against? I'll put that motion. Those for. And carried. Item 14.6, documents for sealing. Do I have a mover? Councillor Piccinini.
I move that the alternate motion be adopted.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Galbally. Councillor Piccinini?
Nothing to add.
Councillor Galbally?
No.
Any speakers against? I'll put that motion. Those for? And carried. Item 15, urgent business. There are no items of urgent business. Item 16, councillors' question time. Any councillors have any questions?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Goff.
Mr Mayor, I'm rising to ask if you're aware of a situation that's occurring on a daily basis, especially a weekday basis, in Greenaway Street, Bulleen. I've spent some time around the factory areas of Bulleen in the past few months and talking to a number of the people there. And one of the issues that I've noticed is that Greenaway Street is actually being used as, I suppose, a shortcut or a rat run, is another term for it, in the AM and the PM peaks. So in the AM, it's a shortcut for the right turn from Manningham Road into Bulleen Road, and the vehicles will go into, cross over and go into a street that was actually designed to service the factories and to service a court in there of factories. It wasn't designed as a thoroughfare road. And indeed, the intersection of Greenaway Street and Bulleen Road is an extremely dangerous intersection because of your view lines to the right, which are very hazardous. In fact, Manningham many years ago built a fence along its properties along Bulleen Road there, and we had to pull that fence down and replace it with some like a rural fence of a post with some single strand wire because of the view line that was blocked. And that's the view line that people are going to be required to use to do the right-hand turn out of there in the morning. And in the afternoon, indeed, it's probably a busier time because so many of the cars with the bank up of traffic coming along and wanting to use the bridge will take that shortcut down Greenaway Street and exit into Bulleen Road. It's causing issues for anyone that's got factories or anything down there because of the ability of their vehicles to manoeuvre in and out easily, especially when you have a chain of cars rushing through to cut the corner. So, Mr Mayor, I'm wondering if we can put this issue on our agenda and look into seeing if there are any ways in which we can, or substantiate the concerns, but also create a safer area down there with some controls. So I look forward to getting a report from the office with regard to that.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Any further questions? Item 17, confidential reports. There are no confidential reports. As there are no further items, I will close the meeting. Thank you for coming.